Hi, in this video series, we're going to start with this new book, Strategy and the Business Landscape by Pankaj Ghemawat. This is a classic textbook. If you want to learn about strategy, you want to start here. So let's get into it. The first chapter talks about various history around how strategy evolved. Strategy had different meanings. Everyone had different use of the word strategy. It started off in the very beginning with a military chief being the chief strategist, right? So that's where it was started. It was like in the 1800s or even before, right? And then The Invisible Hand by Adam Smith, who said, hey, there's chaotic markets. It's very hard for you to make any strategic impact on like the market overall because they are disconnected. Railroads started with this connection where a lot of these companies and the markets were connected globally. And that changed the meaning of strategy. So strategy, for some, it's like a limiting step. Like how do you improve your current steps and processes and improve your bottlenecks? For some, it's like how do you compete effectively? For some, it's like how do you have long-term goals that are purposefully, you can take actions today, like Peter Drucker theory. Like how do you take purposeful actions today so that you can align your results and your long-term goals, right? So different ways in which strategy has evolved. Knowing history of strategy is critical because that's how you get to understand that there are patterns. There are patterns in which the word strategy was used, and so you can find out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. You can build a conceptual framework as to what makes sense when it comes to strategy. What is the best course of action that I need to take as a company to compete effectively? So SWOT analysis is one such example. This is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT, SWOT analysis. So you look at your current industry environmental conditions on the left. You look at like the economic development, the technical advancement, the physical, political, social, all of those industry climate, and then you look at your competitive, distinctive, competent that you bring, right? So, what is your key competence as a company? What value do you add that is far superior than any other company out there? When you look at the opportunity in the industry and you look at your key competence, and if you try to bring them together, that's when you can make the best analysis. It's like, hey, what is my product and what is my market and what's the fit for that? So you do this analysis, and that's how SWOT analysis came in. But at that time, when strategies evolved over like 200 years, a lot of industry leaders needed help. They needed consultants. That's where Boston Consulting Group came in around 1960s, where they helped. Their mission is to help companies find meaningful relationship between their company products and their chosen markets, right? Like, how do you find the product market fit? Is there a framework? Is there like rules for success, right? And how do you make those complex decisions? How do you conceptualize the thinking? So these were the group of people who bridged the gap between pure academics and pure industry, and they were like somewhere in between. They took the best of the academics and the best of the industry people as clients, and then they started building frameworks. They started the first few steps around 1960s on bridging the gap of the strategic thinking processes and frameworks. So they came up with a lot of new things. They came up with the experience curve, and it's we've seen this with Intel microprocessors that and many other industries that when you double the production, when you start producing more and more, then there is at least a huge reduction, like 20-30% reduction in costs, right? Because scale economics come in, right? Like you can build, procure goods at lower cost. You can manufacture them in mass. You can now have economies of scope. You can distribute multiple different products with your same distribution channel. You have, over time when you build more and more, your learning curve goes up. So your people in your company get better at it. And so then there's tech innovations that you can use. So they came up with this concept to help. Like, hey, there are these things to think about, concepts to think about that you can use to build your strategy. So experience curve was one such thing. Then they came up with SBUs, or strategic business units, right? Or the natural business units. Basically, Boston Consulting Group said, hey, there are these concepts that we need to think about and align. Like if you have 10 groups in your company, how do you divide one group versus the second? You would want to keep the groups aligned in such a way that it's more external facing and competition facing versus like internal control facing. So that was another key concept that Boston Consulting Group came up with. And they really wanted to optimize for the business goals, right? And so SBUs was another concept. And then they came up with portfolio analysis, Boston Consulting Group. Like, look at this one. This is the most important slide in this entire video. So if, let's say, there are four types of projects in any company, four types of project. A project, it's called a cash cow project. Either it's a star project or a question mark project or a dog project. So what is a cash cow project? And cash cow project is a project that is cash generating machine in your company. It's high margin, it generates cash, and it's like stable, and it, keeps giving you cash, right? So that's the cash cow project. You don't want to disrupt these. You want to continue getting the cash out of this. But these, if you look at the industry attractiveness or environment attractiveness, it's low, because you're maybe mostly penetrated, and that industry is maybe declining slowly, and it's not even growing as quickly. But you are competitive. You are competitive in that space. So this is the x-axis from right to left is your competitive position. Like, how competitive are you in that? And if you were to frame this as this one, it's your distinctive competence on the right. And so if you look at the x-axis, it goes from low to high, your competitive position, meaning how good as a company you are, what kind of traits you have to launch this kind of products, right? And then on the left y-axis, it's from low to high, industry environment attractiveness. Like, how interesting is this in new industry? So you would have penetrated certain markets. It's no longer interesting to you because you already penetrated it. So then what you're really looking for is this segment. This segment is when you have high industry attractiveness, because these are new opportunities of growth. But then there could be projects that you have to kick off, which is this question mark projects. Question mark projects are projects that can become huge opportunities, like continue to grow very quickly and eventually become a cash cow. So cash cow project, the money from cash cow project is used to fund new innovative ideas in your market or in a sideline market that's very connected to your overall mission. And then once those become from low growth to high growth, they become your star projects. Once they become high growth and you penetrated the market, you can start getting more and more cash out of this. Remember this experience curve. The higher the penetration you have, the lower your cost and your margins go up. So when your margin goes up, you becomes a highly effective cash cow, and no one else can compete. So your goal is using the portfolio analysis to bucket your projects, right? Or bucket your teams. Is this a cash cow team? Is this a question mark team, which is you're innovating in this new area that's low growth, but can become high growth? Is this a star project, meaning, hey, you've already invested and it's becoming high growth, and eventually it can penetrate the market and become a cash cow? So that's the cycle you would want your cash to go. Your cash should be used for funding your star projects and funding your question mark projects. And eventually you expect your question mark projects to become your star projects to become your cash cow projects, right? And then there are these dog projects. The industry is not attractive and you're not competitive. You should just get rid of them. Like, either divest or just pay lower attention. Your cash shouldn't be going here. You should be taking cash out and then using it for your question mark and star projects. So this is another concept that Boston Consulting Group came up with: portfolio analysis. How do you position yourself? Think about it. These are all framings. Market penetration was one such framing. Business unit, how do you organize them, was one such framing. Portfolio analysis, another such framing. So these were concepts that Boston Consulting Group came up with in the very early days that helped shape this industry in terms of strategic thinking. And there are many other ways, right? You can think about it from a risk perspective. From left to right, risk is increasing. And from top to bottom, risk is increasing. The newer products, existing products where you want to penetrate your market, new products which can become market penetration, and then there is newer markets that you want to break through, and then there are areas you want to get rid of. So NSOF metrics, this is another metrics, same way of looking at this but in a different way, right? So many such things came up. Eventually the GE came up with this McKinsey metrics, right? They also had they broke it down into not just 2 dimensions but maybe 9 different ways of looking at this, right? So business unit strength versus industry attractiveness, similar axis, but then there are different factors being considered. So but portfolio analysis does have a lot of problem, which is what the first chapter ends with, which is like it has too much of a heavy focus on cost, right? It's too maybe biased too heavily on the short to keep you in the lane to focus, but then you could become, you could have competition from areas which you didn't expect, and now you would be disrupted. So, and also the variance on classification based on like different metrics that you use. If you use the GE McKinsey metrics, you might have bucketed your classify your project into grow, but some, in maybe in Asnoff metrics, you would have had it in the market development. In the portfolio analysis, the original 2 by 2, you might have it in a question mark. So the variance was just too high in terms of classification. So competition from upstarts, and variance for classification. There's lots of it's not foolproof, but at least it gives you conceptual thinking in terms of how you think about your portfolio. And that is the key. That's the key learning. If you were to focus on and learn one thing, is the history has evolved for strategic thinking in a pretty big way. And many different people think of strategy in different ways. And Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, and others, they made a huge impact. So how do you think about this? What are the concepts? And so I'm super excited about continuing to learn more in this new chapters going forward. Thank you.